I find it really hypocritical how Indians and South Asians will talk about prejudice they experience by white people and then turn around and take that same discriminatory energy and use it against black people. I know it happens. I grew up hearing it. So let's talk about how you are so eager to fit in that you would rather appease those who oppress you than support other oppressed groups. You know what that smells like? Desperation for acceptance. And the sad part is, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work to blend in, you will still be seen as an other.
Hold on, I have to shut the door and tell you guys this. I was talking to this guy, and when I say talking, just a friend, and he's Asian and white. And he tells me, like, I was like, hey, are you worried about, like, Trump and the things that he's been saying and people going to different countries, not being able to come back into the US? He dead ass looks me in the face and he says, like, he's not really worried because most people think he's white. I paused. The way I paused and looked at him made me realize that mixed black people are not the only ones who have like that blindness to think that they don't look black. Because when he said it to me, I was like, do I correct him? He really thinks he does not look Asian. And I was like looking at him dumbfounded because I was like, no, but you look Asian. So now I've realized that biracial black people are not the only ones who have that blindness. And I did not correct him because at this time I was like, I don't think he needs that lesson from me. I don't think he needs it from me.
Fucking random Indians coming in who have their own country, by the way. I don't like them. I don't like the way they smell, the way they look. I don't care. I have the right not to like them. I don't have to like everyone. I want to have a country in which people like me are in charge.
So a white man states that he doesn't want Indians in his country because he wants people like him to lead the country. And let's talk about what it actually means. Is white supremacy dressed as patriotism, as it taps into the rise of anti-South Asian hate on social media, specifically being pushed by white supremacists. This is just not coming from one hateful man. It's a embodiment of a greater issue of many people feeling comfortable to say this out loud. Specifically on social media, where these type of content are not scrutinized and addressed, we see South Asian people being mocked, dehumanized, at full stereotypes. If anything, it just makes them more of a target. Racism and hate. As I add, the irony of saying this, especially within Australia, where the foundation of this country is of the disposition of Indigenous land, culture, language practices, which Australia always was, always will be Aboriginal land. European settlement that resulted to Europeans arriving to Australia, direct result of migration, not because they're indigenous to this land. Crazy how people will use South Asian people for their labor, their food, culture, and what they add and bring to this country, but at the same time be very quick to demonize them and dehumanize them because of their racism. The hate you're seeing is not about preserving culture, it's about the fear of losing power. We see people like this disguising white supremacy as patriotism and concern, because they're desperate to cling on domination.
So let me ask this real question. What exactly do you gain by, chasing whiteness when whiteness has always proven to be elusive, or when whiteness, was never built to include you? Or what happens when you have spent all of your time distancing yourself from other people of color, looking down on black people, aligning yourself with the white power structure, bleaching your skin, chasing proximity to whiteness, only still to be told at the end that you don't belong here? Because I think that is what we are seeing right now, especially with these Indians, and I mean the Southeast Asians, people who believe that proximity or their proximity to whiteness would protect them are now openly talking about racial discrimination by white people, as if this is not what black people have spoken about for decades. And suddenly, then unity is being discussed. But unity only when you're in crisis is not unity at all. The question is this really about justice? Is this really about talking about racial fairness and racial discrimination and racism? Or is this desperation backfiring on the people that have been chasing whiteness and their proximity to whiteness. Let's talk about this and let's watch these videos, and I'll be back with some good commentary.
I'm happy that like Indians are now seeing like what we've been telling them for so long. Like, you are not part of the white supremacist party. Like, you can be conservative, you can have money, you can be successful. They will let you get to a certain level. But the second Vivek Ramaswamy said, "Hey, I think I should be president," all of a sudden, all we see is like unfettered racism towards Indian people. The whole factory ethics lady is probably responding to more posts about Indians and how they smell than any other group. And it's literally because Indians try to adopt conservative politics. Indians are now facing more racism because they tried to go to the racist party and do what they do. And those racist people said, "Oh my God, I'm going to be racist to you."
Have you noticed that there's more hate towards Indians online now rather than a few years ago?
On social media, I've seen some videos which do showcase the things where some people are just shouting, "Go back," or whatever. And I do feel that we need to take action against that. But apart from that, I guess it's in certain parts of Canada than all over Canada.
Yeah. Every time I go on Reddit, even if it's like, I go on Personal Finance Canada a lot, and it's just racism towards Indian. Like, if the Indians were driving up the prices, like, everything would be so much cheaper.
There is a lot of racism going on. When I came, it was not like that 3 years ago, but now, yeah.
I have felt that there's a different attitude towards Indians sometimes in certain areas or in certain places, but there's nothing extreme that has happened to me, but it's lot more of the attitude changes, but not the words. That's what I've realized.
I just want to comment on this video about this Indian couple getting married. The Indian guy is very dark. He's basically my complexion, and his wife is a little fairer than him, and the comments they're getting is just like, why is this dark-skinned man with this lighter-skinned woman? It's just like complexion complaints from Indian folks, from their own folks.
और जब मैंने लोगों का reaction देखा, I was in that my family got targeted. You are nobody.
Anytime I see a video that really like hits me, I go, man, let me talk about it. First of all, India is like just, I mean, they are. When it comes to like complexions, I mean, listen, every brown society has complexion problems. This all stems from white supremacy and European colonization, European standards of beauty. This is all facts. India was colonized by England, Nigeria colonized by England, England colonized a bunch of Caribbean, France, all of that. So all the European influence made brown people feel like shit, okay? Even in their makeup products, if you go to some of these countries, when I was in Thailand, all the advertisement was light-ass Thai people, light as fuck, and most of the Thai people are dark brown. It's the same thing in the Philippines, same thing in some parts of Africa, and same thing in parts of Asia. It's insane. It's like even with Bollywood, it's like these Indians be light as fuck, but they still look Indian, which is hilarious. But they are light as hell. That's why I always advise people to watch movies from Telugu, the Telugu movies. That's a different part of India, but you'll actually see brown people, because the majority of India is brown. So it's nice to see these new Telugu movies like RRR, for example. If you're ever interested, watch RRR and you'll see actually brown people. You know, of course, all these different countries are made up of different complexions, but they always put the lighter people in front. There's one called Light and Lovely, I think. It's a bleaching cream in India, Light and Lovely. I think it's Light and Lovely, I think. If I'm wrong, let me know. But it's like, they have that on the shelf like fucking Vaseline. They buy that Light and Lovely. In Nigeria, they had Ambi. I think it's still there. But a lot of lightening creams are in a lot of these countries, even in America, and it's pretty fucked up. And I heard that a lot of these lightening creams cause cancer and like that. So for those of you who are lightening your skin, I don't want anything good to happen to you. Be yourself. Now, this is not me wanting people to die of anything, but you deserve to be poisoned because you already are poisoning yourself with your negative thoughts and ashamed of what you look like. Listen, I understand as a dark-skinned man. I understand people make fun of you. They do this, all this other. Yeah, it happened to me as a kid, but thank God I had strong Nigerian parents where dark skin is normal. It's okay. Being dark is great, all right? Be who you are. You understand what I'm saying? And I remember when light-skinned black folks would make fun of me. Yes, light-skinned black people say, you know, they call you black this, black that, dark this, but all my light-skinned friends look like now. That light skin doesn't hold up too long. Listen, it's a joke, but it's a joke though. But anyway, all complexions are beautiful. You know what I'm saying? And that couple look great. And it's a shame that really India has a real serious complexion problem, and it's fucked up. It's really fucked up. And yeah, I just wanted to throw that out. So be proud of who you are. And all you dark folk out there, you're still dope. You're still amazing. And I know, listen, it gets really bad because even in the NBA, I think the NBA is very light-skinned now. The NBA is very light-skinned. It used to be darker back in the day. You look in the 80s and 90s, way more darker dudes. But now it's very light-skinned. That's probably why they don't play defense, because if you foul one of these light-skinned dudes, they'll bruise easy. You know what I mean? And you know, and I think this is an example. I think the reason why the NBA is so light-skinned, because you had a lot of insecure dark-skinned basketball players in the past, so they made sure they got with either really light-skinned women or white women to make sure their children didn't have to suffer later on.
Growing up in Russia, I felt really out of place. I was born in a very little town in eastern Russia, and everybody there was white. Well, of course, growing up, I thought like, oh yeah, like I'm white too. And personally, I never experienced any racist jokes as a kid. Like my friends also thought of me as a white person. In Russia, we also don't really put too much emphasis on race or your sexuality or anything like that. Like you're just a person. It might be different now, but back then that's how it was. It genuinely wasn't until I moved to Canada that I realized that I'm Asian. I know how weird that sounds, that like, okay, was I stupid or blind? But no, like for real, I never paid that much attention to my race. It wasn't until I went to a Halloween store and put a blonde wig on myself and looked at myself in the mirror that I thought, yeah, something's not right here. And I had to go on a whole 10-year journey of accepting my Asian side. And it doesn't help that in Canada, everyone makes your race like super obvious. But yeah, now we're here.
Why are Asians the biggest minority that are so obsessed with being or trying to be accepted by white people?
That's a good question, my Asian brother. And the one thing I have an answer to. Short answer is white people. The long answer is, you see, back in the day, there was this thing called the transatlantic slave trade. Wealthy white people had to convince a shit ton of white people why they should enslave black people. Because back in the day, you could enslave anyone. But how are you going to mass enslave a group of people who look like you? Especially if you did, because they did try that. They'll just run away and blend into the crowd. But black people were different. There's a continent of them. They'll always be black no matter what you do. They didn't even speak your language or share the same culture too. So you couldn't really relate to them. So white people came up with a theory. The longer slavery went on, the more derogatory they thought of black people. As time went on, slavery wasn't becoming as popular or ethical or profitable as before. So they turned their eyes to Asia, where there were spices, silk, wealth, technology, everything. Everything is Asia. And while yes, there is Africa, Asians, the problem is they don't look like black people. They don't have the same skin color as black people. There are many different colors of Asians. And while yes, they did end up colonizing Asia and exploiting it, there were Asians that literally looked pretty white passing. So they ended up coming with the term yellow to find a way to make Asians seem less, white. And it worked, honestly. But some Asian countries did end up not getting colonized. Japan, South Korea, Thailand. But those countries were somehow screwed over regardless by European influence. But jumping to the more modern era, when Asians start moving to America, they were also being massacred and discriminated against. But even though that black people and Asian people were getting discriminated against by the same group of people, Asians were seen as the model minority. I'm going to use this theory. I'm going to call it the Massa theory. Since white people colonized the world and were seen as the superior race and screwed over all these countries and colonized all these countries and exploited all these countries, you're bound to see these people as a superior race. So when these people run the world, who would you rather be seen as? A white person or a black person?
Now let's get into this. In China, we have a saying goes, whiteness covers all your ugliness. Means as long as your skin is pale, you will still be seen as beautiful even if your features aren't striking. In Chinese, almost every word to compliment women's beauty like 肤若凝脂, 肤白貌美, centers around pale skin. Back in the day, only the rich could stay indoors, avoiding farm labor under the sun. If your skin was pale, it meant you didn't have to work, you were high class. It's the same logic behind the modern version of British girls getting fake tans. The UK doesn't get much sun, so if you get tanned, it's a signal you are rich enough to vacation on the beach all the time. It's not really about beauty, it's a status symbol. And number two, it's very much tied to colonial history. For centuries, white skin was positioned as the ultimate standard of beauty. When white features are constantly glorified, it sends a message: this is what beauty looks like, this is what you should aspire to. You often see the East Asian girls do the double eyelid surgeries or nose job to look more like Westerners. And some may say beauty standards are neutral. They're designed to keep certain people at the top and others striving to catch up.
I'm gonna rant a little about Asians who want to be white so bad. I was having a conversation with someone the other day and she went to a gathering, right? These people are Asian, right? But there are two white guys. Someone brought the Malona ice cream. The girl, who's Asian, goes, "Ew, is it an Asian ice cream?" And then she'd make comments like, "I wouldn't know because I don't have an Asian friend." She made another comment that said something like, "This feels like a whole bunch of Asians playing with two super smart white guys, playing a word game." Some shit like that. It's so cringe seeing Asian people try to cater to white people. Asian people act like proximity to whiteness makes them superior. You can literally feel the energy shift when someone has internalized racism. It's this weird mix of embarrassment, superiority, and "I'm not like those other Asians" vibes. And honestly, it's painful to watch. I've seen it so many times. Some Asians act like the second they get a white friend group, they level up in the social hierarchy. Suddenly, everything Asian is cringe or weird or low tier. And you know what's the funniest part? They'll distance themselves from anything remotely Asian like it's toxic, and then they will over cater to their white partners or friends. Do you hear yourselves? It's like watching someone actively shrink themselves to fit into a box that was never built for them in the first place. Look, I get it, alright? A lot of Asians grow up being praised for assimilation. A lot of us are raised to believe whiteness equals safety, opportunity, acceptance. That's literally how internalized racism works. Acting like being white adjacent makes you superior to your own culture. Acting disgusted at your own food, your own features, your own background. It's not about hating anyone. It's more about calling out a pattern that harms all of us. Because when you look down at your own identity, the world learns to do the same. So yeah, Asians who think being white makes them better, just know that the rest of us see right through that.
Being called the model minority split black people and Asian people apart, because Asians would rather be seen as the white passing people or the white side of history than, the black side of history. They still end up getting screwed over, but after World War II and stuff, their country started modernizing and advancing. They were getting better opportunities in the US. Because they were also becoming more successful and black people were still seen as poor and ghetto, kind of reinforced the model minority stereotype. Which is also hurtful, I might add, because there are Asians who are still poor, mostly Southeast Asianers. And there were times where black people and Asian people still stood up to each other and worked together to go against oppression. Yet, even today, we can still see the echoes of the modern minority stereotype. LA riots happened, where black people felt like the Asian community wasn't really helping them. You see, for some people, the Asian community was always seen in the black community. There'd be stores, salons, mini markets in black communities, but black people felt like Asians were only there for business. They were part of the black community, but black people didn't feel like they were a part of the black community. So when one of the catalysts, Latasha Harlan's death, happened, it was just fuel to the fire at the LA riots. And sadly, $350 to $400 million of businesses were burned down in the LA riots. Korean people felt like they were defending themselves and their businesses, which was their livelihood. Black people felt like they were getting revenge. And I will honestly admit, probably were just looting just to take advantage of the chaos. But it just shows how tensions from that far really impact us today.
So why is whiteness so often an ideal of beauty in Asian society?
Beauty is, which I think you should ask yourself where these standards actually come from.
So this woman is trying to show you what is not elegant and use these models. And anti-Blackness is very common in Asian beauty culture. For example, there's this Thai ad whose tagline was translated as, "Just being white, you will win." And it had numerous images of a woman in blackface. And given how many beauty products in Asia are about lightening your skin, it is easy to assume it's all Eurocentrism. But in fact, a lot of these Asian norms draw on many cultural factors, and a lot of them tie to patriarchy. For example, in many Asian societies, fair skin has been beautiful for millennia. So for example, in historic China, a beautiful Tang woman had very fair skin, often embellished with the use of makeup. Similarly, historically in Korea, fair skin, Mughal India. It's because the fair skin signaled privilege. And so they could be indoors, not tan, and have people take care of their beauty, because the way they presented themselves was a symbol of the power and wealth of the men of their family. I mean, you don't wake up like this. This historic Korean woman had somebody help her. So you already had a culture that prized fairness, and then with the rise in the age of exploration or exploitation of seeing people who looked different, it basically doubled that anti-Blackness, which absolutely does not make it okay. But what it means is, so if you're Asian or Asian American, you have to be very cognizant of the negative and harmful stereotypes that you have been susceptible to and that you have to choose to counteract.
Hi friends, I hadn't planned on making another video right now, but Indian people are coming for me in my comments. And, so I know I'm on the right track with what I'm saying. But what I want to talk about in this specific video is Indian people and anti-Black racism specifically. So whether this is within the country of India, or whether this is when Indian people immigrate to any part of the world, whether it be on the African continent, in North America, South America, wherever, Indian people have, and again, I'm not saying every single Indian person, but I'm talking about Indian people generally, our society, our culture, the belief systems that Indian people hold, etc. Indian people are extremely, extremely racist, especially towards Black people. And if you take a Black person who has been around Indian people for any period of time, Black people pick up on this. It's something that is, this is not a secret. Whether you're talking to, say African students who study in India, which there are African students who are there, or whether you're talking about, say, Kenyans. There's a large population of Kenya that are Indian people that have immigrated to that country, or South Africa, or Canada, or, the United States, whatever. But Black people pick up on Indian people's racism because it is quite apparent. It's something that that is there. It's obvious. So I'm just going to give you an example of me, my family, and the Indian people in South Africa. When I grew up there, I spent the first 12 years of my life under apartheid. So we had servants, maids, cooks, gardeners, etc. And all of these people were Africans. They were Black people. And all of the Indians in South Africa had servants. Okay, they were all Black. Now, how were these servants treated? They were treated as subhuman. They were not considered to be human beings with feelings. They drank out of different cups. So Indian people would not share their table with the servants, who were an integral part of their household. They took care of their children. They drove them everywhere. They cooked for them. But they had to eat off of separate dishes. They could not sit on the furniture. They, if say for example, when we left our home and we traveled, so we lived in Pietermaritzburg, we traveled to Durban on the weekends, holidays, whatever. Our maid would come with us. She was not allowed to sleep on or sit on our furniture or sleep on our furniture, so she had to sleep on the floor. These are things that all Indian people did in South Africa. And now I'm just talking about South Africa. I'm not talking about, say, when Indian people immigrate to other countries. But this is true even in first generation Indians. Because say if an Indian person had to marry a Black person, 9 times out of 10, that Indian person's family is going to completely disown the Indian person who married a Black person. Now, Indian people generally, they want Indian people to marry within their, they want Indian people to marry other Indian people, and then they even go into like, well, they want, the same caste, and they even have subcastes and all of this stuff. So, but if an Indian person marries a white person or say an Asian person, it's not considered to be as heinous of an act as if an Indian person married a Black person. So this can be tied to the caste system because, like I mentioned in my previous video, Indian people are racist towards other Indian people. And some of this is based on skin color. It's not entirely based on skin color, but there is a factor that is, that is apparent in that. So Ava DuVernay made a movie called Origin, and it's based on Isabel Wilkerson's book Caste, which somebody just pointed out. And it's very difficult for me to talk about these very heavy topics in 10 minutes. So I can't cover everything, but Indian people are inherently racist as a culture and as a society. And then within that racism, there is a hierarchy. So yes, while an Indian society might be racist towards Western people, Western culture, white people, etc. Just like Vivek Ramaswamy making that comment about how, he made all these disparaging comments about, Americans. And he was talking about white Americans, how they're not as smart and blah, blah, blah. These are not uncommon things that Indian people say within themselves. I have been privy to these conversations in whether it's, say a friend situation or families or extended families or just in my Indian community. These are very common beliefs that most all Indian people will espouse. They will say things like, well, white people have no culture. Their food is horrible. They just go on and on and on. But when it comes to Black people specifically, Indian people have extremely racist views about Black people. And it doesn't matter how nice this Black person is, how educated they might be. None of those things matter. And that's why I say that a lot of Indian people, they align themselves with a very far right-wing kind of Trump ideology. So you might take somebody from, say, America who is a Trumpster, and they espouse all these very racist views. And you could take an Indian person, and in many respects, those views are going to align because Indian people generally tend to hold very racist views. It goes back to the caste system, yes, but it also ties into other aspects because, as I pointed out before, there are the so-called untouchables in India, and Indian people are racist towards them as well. So this is all a very, these are complicated things, and I'm just trying to do my best to share these ideas because we are in terrible times right now in the United States and in the world generally. So I guess Indian people, if you guys want to come for me, come for me. I am not saying anything that's untrue. This is the truth, and I think it's kind of an open secret.
Okay, let's be honest here. This obsession with being lighter or closer to whiteness, closer to European standards or beauty standards has never actually been about beauty. By those people that want to be, close to them, close to the white people. It's not about beauty. It's about acceptance. They want to be accepted by these people. And it is about an inferiority complex produced by colonialism, essentially, and colonial education. And when you constantly measure your worth by how far removed you are from blackness, and how close you are to whiteness, what you're really saying, whether you understand this concept or you don't, but what you're saying is that white people are the standard of humanity. And that mentality doesn't just harm black people or people of color collectively. It actually directly eventually destroys the people that believe in it. You see, the same people that are chasing the proximity to whiteness are often the one that, will suffer from this. And because whiteness is not an identity that you can earn, you can work so hard to get. It's a gated power structure. And the gate is only opened to those that are white and they know themselves and they know each other. So you cannot assimilate, you cannot conform, you cannot please them, and you cannot distance yourself however much from people of color so you can be accepted. The truth is, you will never be white. They sometimes might tolerate and entertain you to some level, as long as they can or they are benefiting from you. But at the end of the day, you will always be reminded where you belong, and they will show you that you're dispensable. And here's the uncomfortable irony. You see, the same communities now speaking about racial oppression, the the Southeast Asians, those people from India, have for decades actively, participated in anti-Blackness. They look down on darker skinned people in their own countries. They mock African-like features, and they reinforce their caste hierarchies in places where they come from, and they teach their children that black equals or blackness equals inferior. But now that white people are openly discriminating against them, suddenly racism is a problem, as if this is not something that we have been discussing for so long. And suddenly solidarity matters. They want people to rally behind them, to support their cause, to talk about them being racially discriminated in America, in Canada, in Europe, and in Australia. And this is where I personally would love to draw the line, because you don't get to dismiss other people of color when it benefits you, then turn back and run to them, run to their shelter when whiteness turns its back on you. Because that's not solidarity, that's convenience. And unity built on convenience will always collapse when comfort, returns. So here is the lesson, and the lesson that most people either refuse to accept or cannot accept, or don't understand. White supremacy is not about the skin tone alone. It's about power. It's about control of institutions, resources, narratives, and global dominance generally. You cannot, you can be light-skinned and still powerless. You can be successful and still disposable. White supremacy only ever benefits white people. It is their structure. They have built it for their benefit, and it is built, to discriminate against anybody else other than them, and they know themselves. There's in the white power structure, there is no adjacent people. There is no honorary whites. There is no model minorities. Nothing like that. It is either white or nothing. And the moment the system feels threatened, everyone else is reminded of their place. That's what's happening right now with these people. And I remember doing a video when Indian immigrants to the United States of America were basically complaining that black people in America get far more attention. And I did feel like that was very ignorant of them, because one thing that they should understand is that Black Americans get attention in America because they fight for it and they earn it and they deserve it. And by the way, they are not immigrants into America, and they cannot, fight and complain to have the same treatment with the host. And for them, they know that they came to America the other day, for work, for school, and such courses. And so what we are seeing happening now is, instead of them confronting the system, instead of confronting the system, many people are still hoping for, better treatment within the very system that has really proven countless times that you can never be, part of it. You can only be part of it for as long as you're beneficial to it. And then you are locked out when you become useless to the system. That hope, the hope that somehow you might be accepted, you can assimilate, is a trap. So real unity does not begin in a crisis. If at all there is unity here, it begins in principle. It begins when people refuse to build your identity on someone else's oppression. Because Black people have been talking about this oppression. And many Southeast Asians of lighter skin shades were mum about it because it didn't affect them, or because they felt they were better. At least they were not Black. But now it's backfiring on them. And so this is what we're saying. It begins when you, as an Indian person, refuse. And we're talking about, when we talk about India here, we're talking about Southeast Asia. They have to first of all recognize that they have to build, you cannot build your identity on someone else's oppression. Black people and other people of color have always known the truth. You don't defeat white supremacy by chasing it. You defeat it by rejecting its hierarchy entirely. And so no unity can be activated only when whiteness that you have been chasing now turns and disappoints you. It has to be consistent, it has to be honest, and it has to include dismantling anti-Blackness first, even in their own communities back at home. If they cannot accept to dismantle that system back at home, then they should know that it cannot happen suddenly when they move out abroad. This moment isn't surprising. I feel like it is inevitable. This group, every group that tries to climb the ladder of white supremacy eventually learns one lesson the hard way. And it is always the same lesson. There's no seat for you there at the top of white supremacy. Only temporary silence, only temporary acceptance and tolerance, not acceptance. They just tolerate you for some time before they reject you, before they dispose you, So the real question here is whether people will finally learn or keep repeating the same colonial mistake. Yep, so that's my take on this. Do share with me your thoughts, your opinion in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up if you like, and share it, and subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content, and I'll see you in the next video.